Hey guys, tonight we're pulling an all-nighter on the graveyard shift. The air conditioning in the patrol car is broken again, the dry desert heat clinging to the vinyl seats even though the sun dropped hours ago. But out here, on the Navajo Nation, deep in the reservation's rolling silence, it's not the heat that gets you. It's the way the darkness swallows sound. The only company I have is the perpetual, low-frequency hum of the dispatch radio, a sound that always seems to be whispering just beneath the human voice range. Sometimes it sounds like wind, sometimes static, and sometimes, if you listen hard enough, a distant, lonely laugh. I watched the neon green reflection of the dashboard light swim across the rain-streaked window, a phenomenon I hate because it means the moisture is evaporating immediately off the hot glass, creating a distorted, greasy sheen that looks like liquid shadow. It's midnight, maybe 0100 now, and the fog is rolling in thick from the low canyons, defying the desert logic. When the fog hits this territory, it doesn't just obscure sight, it warps time. You probably won't make it to dawn after this one. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now in the comments below. Now, dim the lights, maybe crack open a window for that midnight fog, and let's hit the streets together. The thing about working tribal police is that your jurisdiction isn't just lines drawn on a map by the federal government. Our territory, the Dineta, is 27,000 square miles of canyons, mesas, scrubland, and shadow stretching across 3 states. It's huge, empty, and largely unconnected. My current patrol route covers an area bigger than Massachusetts, and if my squad car breaks down, the next responding unit is maybe an hour and a half away. Most nights, I am functionally alone. This isolation is usually a professional risk, but tonight, it feels like a spiritual hazard. The rules are different here. You learn them fast, or you don't stay long. I'm Officer Nez. I've been wearing the badge for 15 years. I've seen enough paperwork, enough crime scene tape flapping against the wind in the middle of nowhere, and enough shattered lives to know that 9 out of 10 cases follow a predictable pattern: drugs, domestic violence, vehicle accident. But there's that 1%, the cases that don't fit the files, the ones that defy physics and common sense, the ones that disappear the minute you try to process them. Those are the cases where the badge doesn't protect you. The older officers, the ones who grew up on the res and spoke the deep language before they spoke English, they taught us procedural rules that aren't in the official NTPD manual. These rules deal with things older than the badge itself, things that walk where they shouldn't and take what they want. Rule 1. If the missing person's vehicle is found, but the ignition is running, the keys are in the dash, the doors are locked from the inside, and there are no footprints in the dust, you do not touch the car. You call the supervisor, you establish a perimeter, and you wait for sunup. You do not, under any circumstances, shine your flashlight under the chassis. Rule 2. When you are out on patrol and hear a voice on the radio system, not dispatch, but a clear, human voice calling your name, and the radio signal strength is 0, you turn the volume down immediately. You do not reply. You do not log the interaction. You just drive until the sound stops. They say those voices are just echoes bouncing off the canyons, electromagnetic anomalies. We know better. Tonight, I am reviewing the cold case files for the quarterly report I have to submit to the federal liaison, a task that is entirely administrative but feels deeply unsettling in the quiet of the night. Specifically, the untraceable missing persons cases. We have too many. They aren't runaways. They are people, ranchers, travelers, sometimes even other officers, who leave no evidence. No struggle, just a sudden, clean absence. The factual anchor of the night is the sheer volume of these unsolved disappearances in our sector. The FBI calls them low-priority cold cases because there is usually no foul play indicated, just nothing. We, the NTPD, categorize them internally as ghost calls. I tap my fingers on the cold metal of the desk. The precinct basement is quiet, smelling faintly of stale coffee and industrial disinfectant. I hear the distant, lonely wail of a siren passing on the highway, far enough away that it sounds more like a distressed coyote than an emergency vehicle. It's the mythic element that keeps me glued to the reports, the consistent geographical pattern. All these disappearances cluster around the boundary zones, places where ancient trails cross modern pavement, especially near the towering geological formations the dying consider sacred, like Shiprock or Spider Rock. These are places of power, often restricted, where the rules of the living are thin. I look at the picture of Officer Nez, a woman who vanished 3 years ago near the Lukachukai Mountains. Her truck was found perfectly parked on a dirt road, windows up, the scent of fresh pine lingering inside. Nothing broken, nothing stolen, just her absence. The official report noted voluntary disappearance. The unofficial, scribbled note I found later, hidden in the physical file, simply said, Yaki, taken by the old ones. We have procedures in place to protect us, protocols born of generations of understanding what is out there. We carry the usual police gear, sidearm, cuffs, radio, but we also carry a quiet awareness that the law is not the highest authority here. The vastness of the land forces you into humility. I close the folder, feeling the curiosity shifting into palpable dread. Tonight, the heavy silence outside feels less like absence and more like intense anticipation. The reflection in the monitor screen shows the tired lines around my eyes, but also something else, a faint smear of gray movement behind me, catching the low light of the basement. I whip my head around. Empty, just the stacks of boxes and the humming fluorescent light. I think some crimes were never meant to be solved. They are not incidents of human action. They are natural events, like a flash flood or a sudden collapse of a canyon wall. You don't solve a flood, you just survive it. My radio, sitting on the desk next to the coffee cup, lets out a sudden, sharp burst of static. Not the normal white noise, but a tearing sound, like wet paper. I glance at the time display. 0215. Too early for the real trouble to start. I strap on my sidearm, clip the radio back onto my belt, and grab my worn leather jacket. I need to get out of this basement. The road is safer than these silent walls. I feel the cold metal of the badge pressing against my chest through my uniform. It's a symbol of human order, but out here, it feels terribly small and fragile. The revelation of this first section hits me as I climb the cold concrete stairwell back to the main floor. The Navajo Tribal Police Force isn't just about catching criminals. Sometimes, it's about drawing lines in the dust to remind things what dimension they belong in. And sometimes, it's about recognizing when the lines have been erased entirely. As I step back into the main office, the dispatcher, a young woman named Kiva, looks up at me, her eyes wide. She's staring intensely at her main screen, hands hovering over the keyboard. Officer Nez, she whispers, her voice tight. I just got a ping. It's code 10 to 66, unattended vehicle near Canyon de Chelly, Spider Rock area. My blood runs cold. Spider Rock, Rule 1 territory. The rules are about to be tested. Kiva's face is pale under the stark fluorescent light. She's not reacting to the 10 to 66 abandoned vehicle. She's reacting to the location. Spider Rock. Unit 22. I confirm, grabbing the microphone from the hook. I acknowledge 10 to 66. Spider Rock. Spider Rock, or Tsei, is one of the most visually stunning and most spiritually dangerous landmarks in the region. It's a towering sandstone pillar rising hundreds of feet from the canyon floor, home to Spider-Woman, the deity who taught the dying how to weave. It is absolutely sacred ground. It's also notorious for people driving out there and getting lost, either spiritually or literally. The roads leading into the area are barely tracks, washboard gravel that twists through canyons where GPS fails constantly. Officer Nez, Kiva says quietly, leaning into the mic. Her voice is almost a hiss. The ping is registered to a federal vehicle. Fish and Wildlife. Last contact, 2 hours ago. Routine patrol. A federal agent. That raises the stakes and, paradoxically, lowers the sense of urgency for immediate backup. Federal agencies often patrol these boundaries alone, arrogant about the necessity of local knowledge. But the fact that they're gone and their vehicle is still sending a tracking signal, that's exactly the setup for a ghost call. I slide into the patrol car. The interior is immediately stifling, and the broken AC just circulates the stale, dry heat mixed with the dampness of the fog now pressing against the windshield. I turn the ignition. The engine catches immediately, a reliable sound that provides a momentary, false sense of security. The factual anchor here is the treacherous journey. Driving the reservation at night is hazardous even on the main roads, but going off-piste toward Canyon de Chelly requires intense focus. The fog is getting worse now, thick and isolating, swallowing the meager moonlight. My headlights cut through it, creating brilliant tunnels of light that only emphasize the dense blackness on either side. I flip the radio selector to channel B, the one reserved for interagency emergency communications, just in case the fish and wildlife agent made a last-ditch call. Silence. The gravel crunches under the tires of the patrol car. The routine of the drive attempts to impose order on the chaos I know is waiting. I check the rearview mirror. Just fog and darkness. Sometimes, when you're driving these roads at night, especially when you're responding to a call that feels wrong, you check the rearview constantly, searching for any trace of light or movement that shouldn't be there. It's an old habit born of the deep-seated rumor that out here, things tend to follow you, gliding just behind the limits of the vehicle's protection. As I descend into the canyon lands, the elevation drops sharply and the transmission struggles against the steep grade. The air pressure changes, and the static on the dispatch radio, that same faint static from the dispatch radio I heard back in the basement, begins to ramp up, becoming a persistent hiss. I glance down at the signal strength meter, oscillating wildly, full bars to 0, back to full. It's electronically impossible in this area. This is the fear creeping in, delivered via technology. The radio system is the lifelines, and when it starts acting independently, it feels like the land itself is intercepting the signal. I remember Rule 2. When you hear a voice on the radio system, not dispatch, but a clear, human voice calling your name, and the radio signal strength is 0, you turn the volume down immediately. I haven't heard a voice yet, but the static is so thick it feels like it's coalescing, preparing to speak. I instinctively lower the volume until it's barely a whisper, a vibrating presence in the silence. The silence outside the car is what truly alarms me. It's the mythic element, the wrong silence. Out here, there should be sounds, wind whipping through the brush, the cry of a night bird, the skittering of small desert creatures. But as I get closer to the tracking signal, the air is dead. Not empty, but suppressed. It's a heavy, acoustic vacuum that makes my ears ache. It feels like the air itself is holding its breath. I think some crimes were never meant to be solved, because the crime isn't against human law, but against natural order, and we are just witnesses. I navigate a final, blind curve, and the patrol car crests a small ridge. My headlights illuminate the scene. There it is. A dark green Ford pickup, clearly marked U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, parked haphazardly on a narrow stretch of track that ends abruptly at the canyon edge. The scene screams human error, except for one detail: the brake lights are on. I slow my patrol car to a stop about 50 yards back, pulling the mic off the hook. Dispatch, Unit 22. I am 10 to 97 at the location. Vehicle sighted. Green federal pickup, brake lights active. No person sighted. Requesting backup, code 3. Code 3 means emergency lights and sirens. Hurry up. Even though Kiva knows how long it will take for the nearest unit to arrive, the protocol must be followed. Kiva's voice crackles back, distant and distorted, overlaid with the whispering static. Copy, Unit 22. Backup en route from Window Rock. Estimated arrival 90 minutes. 90 minutes. I'm alone in a zone where the laws of evidence and physics are known to be flexible. I step out of the car, gripping my standard issue flashlight. The temperature immediately drops 10 degrees, chilled by the canyon air and the sudden density of the fog. The crunch of my boots on the gravel sounds obscenely loud in the oppressive silence. I approach the truck slowly, weapon drawn, although I know I won't shoot. If it's human, they're long gone. If it's not, a bullet won't help. I reach the driver's side door. It is slightly ajar, not forced, but left open, as if the driver stepped out for just a second. I shine the beam inside. The key is in the ignition. The engine is running, a soft, purring vibration that you can feel more than hear in the thick air. The radio is on, tuned to a country station, but it's playing at an incredibly low volume, barely audible above the engine hum. A half-eaten sandwich is sitting on the passenger seat, wrapped in foil. Everything screams, brief interruption. But there is no agent. And then I see the footprints. I drop my weapon momentarily. It clatters dully on the gravel, and shine the flashlight beam at the ground near the driver's side door. The prints are deep and clearly defined in the canyon dust, leading away from the vehicle. They are definitely the heavy tread of standard issue boots. They start at the running board, take 3 quick strides away from the truck, and then they stop. Abruptly, not fading into the brush, not dissolving into the darkness. They just cease, as if the person making them suddenly lifted straight up into the air and was carried away. I retrieve my weapon, my hands shaking now, the reflection of the flashlight beam dancing wildly on the cold metal. This is the revelation. This isn't a simple missing persons case. This is a deliberate, impossible disappearance, right at the cliff edge where the air is unnaturally cold. I walk slowly to the edge of the canyon, shining the light down the sheer drop towards Spider Rock, which is barely visible through the swirling mist. I don't see anything, but I hear something now, a high-pitched, metallic whine that seems to come from the engine of the patrol car, even though I know it's running perfectly. It's the sound of reality stretching too thin. I look back at the 3 distinct footprints in the dirt, the boots belonging to a man who took 3 steps and vanished. This case already breaks Rule 1 in spirit. No one is in the car, but the engine is running and the key is in the dash. But the impossible tracks are the new variable, confirming the terror that was merely a suspicion in the silent precinct basement. I stand between the running federal truck and the sheer drop of the canyon, flashlight beam playing over the 3 perfect final boot prints. They are the undeniable, physical proof that something truly unnatural happened here. The tracks are sharp, indicating the agent stepped out of the truck quickly, perhaps startled, took 3 strides, and then was gone. The impossibility of it is what grips me. If he was running, the prints would be spaced differently, perhaps scuffed. If he was dragged, there would be drag marks. If he simply fell, the footprints would be much closer to the edge, and I would have heard or seen something falling down the canyon wall. But these prints simply stop in the middle of open ground, roughly 10 feet from the cliff face. My training kicks in, forcing curiosity to yield to protocol, but the fear remains a cold weight in my stomach. I take out my camera and systematically photograph the scene. The running vehicle, the brake lights on, the slightly ajar door, the sandwich, and the footprints. I use the metal of my badge to mark the first print for scale, the cold reflection of the light off the polished metal feeling like an alien presence against the ancient dust. The realistic anchor I cling to now is forensics. I need to document every detail before the morning light or the inevitable wind contaminates the scene. As I squat down to photograph the third and final print, I notice a texture anomaly in the dust. Not a smudge, but a very faint, almost imperceptible pattern pressed into the gravel next to the heel of the boot print. It looks like a weave. Tiny, precise, crisscrossing lines. The mythic element hits me instantly. Spider Rock, the home of Spider-Woman. She taught the Dine how to weave, how to create patterns of protection and survival. But the legends also say she can unravel things, time, people, existence, if they trespass in certain ways. Could those faint lines be the trace of an unweaving? A pattern that dissolved the man mid-stride? I think some crimes were never meant to be solved because the mechanism of the crime exists entirely outside the framework of human physics. The agent wasn't abducted. He was erased. I realize I am breaking the strict, unwritten Rule 3 of the ghost calls. Never linger at the point of disappearance. Document and move. I force myself to stand, pulling out my gloves and evidence bags. My hands are still steady enough to work, but the atmosphere is pressuring me. The silence seems to have thickened, turning into an audible pressure on my eardrums. I cautiously lean into the federal truck. The air inside smells of pine and a metallic ozone scent, the scent of the desert just before a lightning strike. I quickly scan the dashboard. Nothing unusual, except for the internal computer log. I scroll through the recent activity. The agent was logging routine mileage and observations until 0045 hours. Then, a single, short entry in the log at 0047. Contact made. Confirming visual. Tall. That's it. Tall. The brake lights are still glowing red, illuminating the 3 lonely footprints. Why the brake lights? The truck is parked, not moving. I try the gear shift. It's in park. I check the emergency brake. Set. This means the agent must have held the brake pedal after parking and setting the transmission to park, and then walked away, possibly forgetting to release the pedal, or perhaps something else entirely was keeping the circuit closed. A mechanical failure, or the engine begins to sputter, a soft, choking sound that disrupts its previous purr. I look up. The fog is dissolving rapidly around the vehicle, not lifting, but being absorbed back into the darkness. It's like the fog was a temporary curtain, and now the show is over. I need to get out of this immediate vicinity. I climb back into my patrol car, leaving the federal vehicle running. I don't dare touch the key or open the hood. I log the incident over the radio, keeping my voice calm and professional, masking the dread. Dispatch, Unit 22. Vehicle secured. No agent on premises. Evidence indicates subject departed the vehicle on foot and then stopped movement. Scene processed. Moving to establish a wider perimeter. Kiva responds immediately, her voice clearer now. Maybe because I'm facing back toward the nearest tower. Copy that. 22. Window rocked back up 75 minutes. Be advised, Officer Nez, I'm detecting a faint secondary transmission on your frequency. Sounds like heavy breathing. My heart jumps. I glance at the radio. The volume is still down to a whisper. This is Rule 2 territory. The radio system is the vulnerable link, the way the thing that took the agent communicates. The mythic element has breached the technical infrastructure. I keep driving, slowly, tracing the perimeter of the incident, using the patrol car's headlights to cut through the darkness. The gravel track twists back up toward the main road. I drive for about 5 minutes, putting distance between me and the silent truck. I pull over and kill the engine, needing silence to listen. I clip the patrol mic off the dash and hold it, ready to transmit, but unwilling to speak first. The heavy breathing is almost imperceptible beneath the low hiss of the static. It sounds wet, slow, and deep, definitely not Kiva, definitely not human. It seems to be coming directly into the cab, not through the speaker, but as a vibrating presence in the air. This reflection solidifies. I am not investigating a crime scene. I am participating in a performance staged for me. The footprints, the running engine, the note tall. They wanted me to find this. I check my own rearview mirror again. Nothing but the inky blackness. I turn my head slowly, checking the back seat. Empty. The cold metal of my handcuffs, attached to my belt, feels heavier than usual, a useless tool against this kind of transgression. Then, the breathing stops, replaced by a clear, dry whisper. The voice is male, raspy, and speaks perfect English, but with an accent I can't quite place. Old, resonant. Officer Nez, you are standing on the sacred trail. The voice is not coming from the radio speaker. It's coming from the ceiling of the car. I look up at the headliner. Just fabric. I grab the mic, my finger hovering over the transmit button, ready to demand identification or warn dispatch. But Rule 2 screams in my head. You do not reply. The voice continues, louder now, almost conversational, yet terrifyingly close. He shouldn't have been looking up. The rules protect those who look down. Looking up, the agent's last entry, confirming visual. Tall. The implication is stark. The rules that protect us from things older than the badge are not just traditional protocols. They are survival mechanisms that prevent us from seeing the full extent of their presence. The badge protects my legal authority, but the rules, the dying rules, protect my life. The agent broke a fundamental, spiritual law by observing something he shouldn't have. A sudden, sharp movement catches my eye in the passenger window. A shadow. Too fast, too dense, and far too tall. It's moving along the outside of the vehicle. I don't confirm the visual. I look straight ahead, focusing on the dark road, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles are white. I need to get back to the precinct and check the closed files. If this entity is leaving messages, the footprints, the whispered warning, it means it has done this before. I need to find the pattern in the old case files to figure out what happens next. I throw the patrol car into gear, stomping the gas. The tires spin momentarily on the gravel before catching purchase. I am speeding away from the ghost call scene, leaving the federal truck running, brake lights still glaring uselessly into the fog. The radio static immediately drops back to a manageable hum, the breathing gone. The silence returns, but now it feels like a chase, not a pursuit. I drove the long route back to the precinct like a man fleeing a physical presence, not just a psychological terror. Every mile I gained on the empty asphalt felt like shedding a layer of dread. When I finally hit the outskirts of the nearest town, the familiar, sputtering yellow street lamps and the faint smell of wood smoke offered a fragile return to the civilized world, or at least the colonized one. I didn't log the whispered conversation. I just marked the drive time as extended patrol sweep. I parked the patrol car in the back lot, leaving the doors unlocked. I needed to escape the cabin, which felt infected by that unnatural voice. The precinct basement, which smelled of stale coffee only hours before, now feels like a sanctuary of human-made ugliness. A place where paperwork and bureaucracy overwhelm the ethereal. I need to find the pattern. I need to find the truth behind the whisper. He shouldn't have been looking up. The rules protect those who look down. I pull up the digitized records for the cold case files, cross-referencing all recorded disappearances in the Spider Rock area from the last 40 years. The volume is sickeningly high, but I'm looking for specifics. Unattended vehicle, locked doors, or any mention of impossible tracks. The factual anchor I uncover is the file on Officer William Yazzie. William Yazzie vanished 32 years ago. He was a young officer, only 25, responding to a civilian complaint about unusual lights near the canyon boundary. A description common enough to be almost useless. His cruiser was found near the same set of coordinates I had just left. The official report noted mechanical failure and potential exposure leading to his death, even though no body was ever found. But the physical file, tucked away in the deepest part of the precinct basement archives, tells a different story. I pulled a hard copy, the paper yellowed and brittle, smelling like dust and old ink. Inside, there's a handwritten addendum by the investigating sergeant, clearly desperate and frustrated. Vehicle was running. Key in ignition. Door slightly ajar. Found what appeared to be scuff marks in the sand leading away, but they stopped suddenly, as if the subject went airborne. Investigator noted an unusual, faint pattern near the final mark, described as basket weave impressions. Basket weave. The faint, precise lines I saw next to the fish and wildlife agent's boot print. The realization hits me with chilling clarity. The current case mirrors the Yazzie disappearance perfectly, down to the impossible tracks and the cryptic texture. The man who vanished 32 years ago and the agent who vanished tonight were taken by the same process, the same entity. And then I see the photograph. It's a grainy, black and white picture of Officer Yazzie's cruiser at the scene. It's parked in the middle of nowhere, the dome light faintly visible through the windshield. But what draws my breath is the windshield itself. It's perfectly clean, but there is a clear, circular smear on the driver's side, a large, wet mark, perfectly shaped like an eye looking into the vehicle. The note next to the photo simply says, "Condensation internal, wiped clean by subject." I think some crimes were never meant to be solved because they are designed to terrorize the investigators, not the victims. They are messages left in the dust and the files, spanning decades, waiting for the next patrol officer to find a connection. I am deep in the fear now, realizing the pattern, the implication of which is that I am the next target in a repeating 32-year cycle. The mythical element takes form. What if the entity that takes people isn't random? What if it uses these disappearances to communicate, and the communication is only ever meant for a specific observer, a patrol officer whose curiosity overrides their obedience to the protective rules? I look back at the present agent's log entry, confirming visual. Tall. And the whisper, he shouldn't have been looking up. Officer Yazzie must have seen the same thing, perhaps even wiping the condensation away to get a clear look. Maybe that eye mark wasn't condensation wiped from the inside. Maybe it was a wet print left on the outside, a mark of something looking in. I pick up my personal radio from the desk, holding the familiar, cold plastic. I stare at the speaker grill. It looks harmless, a simple piece of equipment. But I know that the radio system is compromised. I call Kiva on the landline, avoiding the airwaves. Kiva, it's Nez. Listen to me. Did the fish and wildlife agent have any personal history? Any local ties? Did he respect the boundaries? Officer Nez, I don't know, but the report says he was new to the region. Transferred from Idaho. Idaho, not Dine. No understanding of the rules. No knowledge of the ancient boundaries. He looked up when he should have looked down. Kiva, is there anything on that secondary transmission frequency? Anything at all? She hesitates. Just that breathing, officer. It's intermittent. But wait, the audio spikes when I try to run a filter on the frequency. It's almost like it's reacting to the attempt to locate it. It sounds like a man sighing deeply. A sigh? A sound of immense, terrible patience. The reflection is clear. This thing isn't hunting, it's waiting. It used the disappearance of the agent to lead me here, to the basement, to the cold file, to the understanding of the pattern. I look at the faded photo of Officer Yazzie. He looks young, earnest, slightly smiling. Did he hear the breathing on his radio too? Did he find the impossible footprints and try to solve the unsolvable? I need to warn the incoming backup unit, but I can't break radio silence on what I know. The official report must remain focused on the abandoned vehicle and the absence of a body. The moment I introduce basket weave prints or talking static, I am marginalized, or worse, deemed compromised. I sit back in the dusty chair, feeling the weight of the years and the repeated tragedy. The terror is no longer acute. It's systemic, woven into the very fabric of the reservation's law enforcement history. I open the last few pages of the Yazzie file. The supervisor eventually closed the case, listing it as a voluntary desertion due to the immense pressure of the job. But the final item, a small, laminated slip of paper, is a note from Officer Yazzie's wife, delivered 6 months after he vanished. It reads, "He told me before he left that night, if the car is running and the moon is full, don't look up at the shadows. Tonight, the moon is obscured by the unnatural fog, but I know it's full." And I looked up at the headliner when the voice spoke. I stand up quickly, grabbing my flashlight. The light beam cuts through the dusty air of the precinct basement. I realize I have violated the unspoken rule for the investigator. I have internalized the curse. Now, I have to go back out on patrol. Because the voice used the radio, and I know it's still out there. And it knows I know the rules. I left the precinct basement quickly, the cold case file of Officer Yazzie still spread open on the table, a silent testament to the cyclical nature of dread on the Navajo Nation. I didn't stop to talk to Kiva. I just waved dismissively and headed straight back to the patrol car. I needed to move, to put distance between the knowledge and the immediate threat, but also to follow the unspoken procedural code of the patrol officer, finish the shift. The sun is still hours from rising, and the fog has intensified, blanketing the scrubland in a damp, silent shroud. I am driving a different route now, avoiding the Spider Rock area, sticking to the higher, more open roads near the main highway. But the radio, my constant companion and lifeline, feels like a ticking clock. I turn the volume of the dispatch radio up just enough so that Kiva's routine announcements are audible, but the static whisper remains submerged. I am listening intently, waiting for the secondary transmission, the mythic element now fully integrated into my tactical awareness. The factual anchor I rely on is the sheer emptiness of the roads. If anything happens, if the creature decides to step out of the fog, there will be no witnesses, no intervention. The isolation is complete. I think some crimes were never meant to be solved because the entity committing them requires only isolation, not motive. I am scanning the rearview mirror constantly now, not just for shadows, but for reflections. I remember the bizarre sheen on the windshield back in Section 1, the greasy, liquid shadow that looked like a distortion. Tonight, the fog is coating everything, and the streetlights I pass are haloed and diffuse. My radio crackles, not static this time, but a distinct, human voice cutting through Kiva's routine traffic stop log. Unit 22. Nez. Do you copy? My breath hitches. It's the voice of my old patrol partner, Tommy, who was killed in a vehicle pursuit 5 years ago. His voice is clear, crisp, and imbued with that familiar, slight impatience he always had. I slam the brakes, pulling the squad car onto the shoulder. I look down at the display. The signal strength is 0. Rule 2 violation. But the voice is too real. I don't touch the mic. I remember Yazzie. I remember the whispered warning in my car. You do not reply. Tommy's voice comes again, slightly distorted, now overlaid with a rushing sound, like wind blowing over a microphone. It's cold out here, Nez. You left me at the intersection of Highway 50. I'm waiting for the backup. It's so tall, Nez. Why didn't you look down? He's referencing the exact circumstances of his death, but twisting the details. Tommy died on Highway 50, but he was alone, and he died instantly in a crash. He didn't wait for backup, and he certainly didn't talk about anything tall. The fear grips me. It is using the radio system not just to communicate, but to psychologically dismantle me by mimicking the voices of the lost. The entity is exploiting grief and guilt, turning my radio, my professional tool, into a direct conduit to my deepest regrets. I quickly switch to Channel C, the rarely used long-distance channel, hoping to break the connection. The moment I flip the switch, the voice changes, becoming rougher, older, but equally familiar. Officer Nez, why are you running the investigation alone? This is a code 3. You need to call me Nez. It is the voice of Officer Yazzie, the man whose death I was just investigating in the precinct basement. The man who vanished 32 years ago. The shock is paralyzing. I am now in the midst of a full-blown haunted radio broadcast. The reflection of the streetlights in the dark glass of the dashboard seems to stretch and distort, the green light warping into something sickly yellow. I look at the clock. 0405 hours. The edge of dawn. I pull my hand away from the radio entirely, letting the spectral transmissions play out without my engagement. The two voices, Tommy and Yazzie, begin to layer over each other, creating a horrible, echoing collage of professional desperation and confusion. It's looking down at me. Why is it wearing my uniform? You didn't check the periphery, Nez. Too tall. Nez, just look up for a second. Weave. The voices are full of frantic energy, a torrent of contradictory commands and chilling observations. They are inviting me to break the final rules, look up, reply, and confirm the visual. I remember the Navajo rule. The ultimate protection is to withhold acknowledgement. If you don't acknowledge the presence, it has no purchase on your reality. The patrol car is my mobile perimeter, but only if I treat it as a sterile, professional environment. I must enforce the rules, even the ones I hate. I physically turn the radio off, silencing the terror instantly. The internal hum of the car remains, the sound of the engine, the blood rushing in my ears. The silence is absolute, heavy, and immediate. The revelation is agonizing. The rules that protect us aren't merely about avoiding sacred ground or ignoring strange phenomena. They are about maintaining psychological distance from the entity's method of operation. It thrives on attention and acknowledgement. The badge is a symbol of my duty, but my silence is the shield. I drive forward slowly, navigating the dense fog. I have to drive past the location where Tommy died to complete my planned patrol route. I brace myself for the sight, forcing my eyes to scan the road ahead, focusing only on the pale line markers. As I pass the intersection of Highway 50, I glance sideways for a fraction of a second. The area is obscured by the fog, but for that split second, I see something. A shape, elongated and thin, standing where Tommy's squad car was found. It is impossibly high, dissolving into the swirling mist above the lamp posts. Its silhouette seems to wear the suggestion of a uniform. My heart hammers against my ribs. I did not confirm the visual. I saw a shadow, a distortion. I must classify it as atmospheric aberration. This is the ultimate test of the rules, to see the ghost suspect and refuse to register it as reality. I grip the steering wheel, pushing the speed up slightly, leaving the familiar crossroads behind. I feel the urge to radio dispatch, to scream a warning about the compromised system, but I resist. I must complete the shift, silently, professionally. The tension settles into a cold, hard resolve. I still have an hour until sunup. The final hour of my graveyard shift, from 0400 to 0500, always feels the longest, a draining slog towards the weak promise of dawn. Tonight, every minute is an exercise in applied professional terror. I am driving blind through the fog, holding the patrol car steady, focusing on the road ahead, enforcing the final, most critical rule. The rule, known only among the deepest-rooted officers, is simple, non-negotiable, and terrifyingly specific. Never look back at the thing, and never, under any circumstance, allow it to see your face in reflection after 0400. The badge is meant to be a barrier, but in the final hour, it becomes a beacon. I keep the patrol car radio off. The silence is now oppressive, demanding I fill it with my own thoughts, which are dark and chaotic. I navigate by instinct and the faint familiarity of the canyon boundaries. I am not driving away from the problem. I am driving around it, maintaining the illusion of a normal patrol route. The factual anchor of this final leg of the shift is the slow, agonizing crawl of time toward sunrise. Out here, the moment the sun crests the horizon, the things that rely on shadow and silence retreat. The shift change is salvation. I am thinking about the reflection, the liquid shadow I saw in the windshield when I first opened the patrol. I realized that the entity, whatever it is, was trying to establish visual contact, to break the protective rules by demanding attention. The agent, Yazzie, and Tommy, they all engaged the visual. They looked up, or they looked too closely into the darkness. I think some crimes were never meant to be solved because the solution requires sacrificing the self to the inquiry. I glance at the dashboard. 0445, 15 minutes to go. The fog is beginning to thin, turning from a dense blanket into wispy, high streamers. I can see the outline of the eastern mesas, a faint bruise of bruised purple and gray on the horizon. I take a deep breath. My resolve is fragile, but holding. I have resisted the radio. I have resisted confirmation, and I have resisted the urge to look back. The interior of the patrol car is ice cold, despite the broken AC. The residual chill of the Spider Rock scene seems to have traveled with me. I look in the passenger seat. My police-issue flashlight is sitting there. I picked it up when I fled the precinct basement. It is clean, functional, and comforting in its weight. But there is a small, damp object lying next to it, catching the faint dashboard light. It is a small, intricately woven piece of natural fiber, the size of a man's palm. The threads are brown and black, woven in an impossible, dizzying pattern that spirals inward. It is the color and texture of desert dirt and shadow. A piece of the basket weave pattern I saw in the dust next to the vanishing footprints. The mythic element has breached my secondary perimeter, the patrol car itself. It was left here. It wasn't here when I started the shift. It was placed while I was driving. I feel the sudden, intense presence of something impossibly close, pressing against the outside of the vehicle, just behind my head. It is the cold, silent attention I felt back at the canyon edge. I have to enforce the final rule. I must not look back. I must not confirm the visual. I must not acknowledge the presence of the gift. I keep my eyes strictly on the road ahead, accelerating slightly as the first pale slivers of pre-dawn light touch the highest peaks. The cold metal of the badge under my jacket feels like a shard of ice. The reflection of the patrol car's interior in the windshield, distorted by the residual film of evaporated moisture, is now showing something else. The faint outline of a figure is rising up from the back seat. Tall, thin, and unnaturally angled, dissolving the internal reflection of the car's roll bar. It is standing directly behind me. I close my eyes for 2 seconds, forcing the image away. When I open them, I focus exclusively on the gray-pink light of the coming dawn. I think some crimes were never meant to be solved because solving them means accepting that the fabric of reality is permeable, and once you accept that, you can't go back to the world where the badge works. I reach out blindly and slide the small, woven fiber into the pocket of my uniform jacket, an artifact of the night, a piece of evidence I will never file, never speak about. It is the entity's way of saying, "We see you. We know you followed the rules." 0458. The sun is technically below the horizon, but the intensity of the light is growing exponentially. The fog breaks completely, dissipating into the sky as if pulled upward by an invisible string. The immediate chill leaves the car. The ambient noise of the desert returns, the distant cry of a hawk, the low rumble of a passing freight train miles away. The silence is gone, replaced by the familiar sounds of the living world. The tension snaps, leaving me shaky but alive. The rearview mirror shows only the long, empty road I just traveled. Nothing. I key the mic, opening the radio for the first time since the ghostly transmissions ceased. Dispatch, Unit 22. Returning to precinct for end of shift. All secure. Kiva's voice is tired but steady. Copy, 22. Welcome back. Window Rock backup units are now approaching the 10 to 66 location at Spider Rock. What should I advise them? I swallow, checking the rising sun. Advise them to establish a wide perimeter, document the scene, and above all else, advise them. Do not look under the chassis of the vehicle, and tell them to look down at their boots. The revelation of the end of the shift. The rules didn't just protect me from being taken, they protected me for something. To be the single living witness, the keeper of the terror. The patrol is over. The horror remains. The sun is up now, a clear, blinding disk of orange fire over the eastern mesas. It burns away the last tendrils of the midnight fog, revealing the stark, familiar beauty of the reservation. I am back in the patrol station parking lot, the asphalt shimmering with heat already. The engine of the squad car ticks and cools, the sound sharp in the morning air. I sit here for a moment longer, breathing deeply, the adrenaline receding, leaving behind a profound exhaustion. The precinct is beginning to wake up. I hear the distant clatter of the coffee machine and the heavy thud of a door closing. I reach into my uniform pocket and pull out the woven pattern. In the harsh daylight, it looks exactly like what it is, a small, dry piece of woven fiber, innocuous, almost like a piece of basket dropped by a picnicker. No impossible angles, no shadow weaving. It is just matter, but I know what it represents. I carefully place it inside the small evidence envelope I pulled from the Yazzie file, marking the envelope with my initials and the current date, but leaving the contents description blank. This file will never be digitized. I watch the hum of the static on the unclipped radio mic. It's back to its normal, benign hiss, the sound of electromagnetic noise, nothing more. The professional world has reclaimed the system. I peel off the badge and set the cold metal on the dash. I look at the rearview mirror one last time. It shows only my face, tired and unshaven, etched with the experience of the last few hours. There is no smear, no distortion, no reflection of anything tall. But I know the thing was there, breathing softly above my head, watching me enforce the rules. I will write the report on the fish and wildlife